Part 1, Chapter 3. Here's the thing. It isn't just that what has been done can be undone. It is also that an undoing can reconstitute. Dead matter can gather itself together. The knitting of hair or bramble or sand breathes life into the inanimate. These bunches, these groupings, these tangles of nothings that turn into something, sand castles, tumbleweed, dust bunnies, have always disgusted me. Why should lifeless particles join like this into discrete forms? What do they want from us? To my mind, they are needy creatures, grotesquely dependent. I first realized this at Dr. Rothman's 2 years after my little brother died, but left us nobody to confirm the fact and mourn. My mother told me I was going to the doctor's. I prepared myself for the rituals of the pediatrician's office. My knees tensed for the rubber hammer, that miracle of reflex. My nostrils anticipated an antiseptic tongue. My tongue, the compensatory lollipop. But as soon as we arrived, a new doctor, my father muttered as he parked and we got out of the car. It was clear to me that it was no clinic. It was a small bungalow. Dead leaves lay in thick mats of neglect on the porch. A withered baby bouncer sat bright and terrible by the door. My father knocked, and a man opened it. Humid air from inside the house puffed out, and I caught the bitter scent of lavender. The doctor wore a cardigan, a pattern of triangles and mesas in orange and blue and white, and trousers that had given up at the ankle. At first, I thought he was wearing 2 pairs of glasses, but then I saw that his lenses were just unusually thick. "Hello there," the man said profoundly, as if I were news. "I am Dr. Rothman." "Hello," I mumbled, the dance of a cat's tail behind him distracting me. I turned to my father, but he was already hurrying down the porch steps with a backhanded wave. He often passed me over to others like this nowadays. I still couldn't tell whether he was afraid of me or for me. I followed Dr. Rothman inside. The glass of the ceiling light in the hall was foggy, a trapped sun making itself sweat. The paint on the walls was blistered. The hardwood floor was muddy and smeared. The planks of wood somehow dirtier than tree bark. And there was all of this dead matter, gathering as if in commiseration or desperation, dust competing with a thin mess of cat hair, everything wilting under the damp that ruled the place like a law. It was a house-turned animal, regurgitating itself. It was the opposite of what I expected of a doctor's office. It was bad for my allergies and for my adolescent acne, both painfully persistent. After every session with Dr. Rothman, I would look in the mirror and find that another rash of pimples had sprung up, quick as mushrooms after the rain. I disliked Dr. Rothman. I despised his sallow eyes behind those thick lenses and his fish lips with their soggy questions. He was the first of the new doctors, the parade of serious men and women who would ask me an endless roll of questions because my brother died in my care. When I first learned about catechism at St. Anthony's, I would feel a faint sense of recognition. Dr. Rothman, my first questioner, my first reader, did not take notes as the others would. He was older, in his 60s, and often yawned if I spoke for too long. I grew accustomed to how he repressed his yawns, tensing and inflating his jaws, making a concertina of his neck. His questions were always about the living Wayne, about the years before he died. For a long time, I thought the man was stupid, My little brother had barely lived before he died, until I realized that there might have been a method in making Wayne present, or a mercy, because at home the world was tilted now, and Wayne's absence in our lives had become the drain toward which everything ran. Tell me again about the drawings, Dr. Robin would ask. What did he draw? People. And did you teach him that? How to draw people? Well, I tried to teach him how to draw the eyes. He never colored in the dark part. The dark part, the circles in the middle, the inner circle or the outer circle. I shrugged. The outer circle. That's called the iris. But are irises always supposed to be dark? See? This seemed like a trick question, but Dr. Rothman's head was bubbling seriously. Well, I guess my mom's eyes are gray, and yours are. I leaned forward as if to see, and I smiled, trying to charm him the way Wayne would have. Dr. Rothman didn't smile back, but he did take off his glasses to show me his eyes, those sea creatures living inside the double-paned tank of his lenses. Blue, I said. He put his glasses back on. I know you have brown eyes, he said, and your father does too. But do you think that maybe Wayne was drawing your mother's gray eyes? No, I shook my head. He wasn't drawing just my mom. It was like a group. A family, maybe. So maybe he made all the irises gray to look like your mother's eyes. Right, but no, I mean whatever. Wayne didn't draw them at all. Eyes, irises. Despite his concern for my mother's eyes, that they be fully represented in my consciousness so as to integrate my mixed ethnic identity, as he put it. My mother thought Dr. Rothman was a bad man. She did not like that he brought up race so much. Why does it matter? When I came home from one session bearing a yellow paperback with the sans serif title, "You Are Perfect," she shook her head and said, "That man is corrupt in his heart." Then again, if my mother was to be believed, there was a lot of corruption lacking in people's hearts, especially after Wayne died. By this time, I no longer trusted anything she said, because although years had passed, my mother maintained that Wayne hadn't died, that he was still missing. She thought we would find him if we just did the right things. She said that literally. We just have to do the right things. It was not easy to trust a woman who had spent the weeks of the initial search for Wayne's body lying face up on the sofa, blasting Nina Simone. The weather had stayed stormy, which made the search nearly impossible, and sometimes, when she wasn't weeping to name me quite par, she would sit and stare at the window and say, "The sky is weeping too." I felt I was seeing her truly for the first time, not only the way we all come to see our parents as fallible humans, but also the particularities of her whiteness, the way she seemed to seek expression of her feelings only through black art. When we got back to Baltimore, everyone said it was important for my mother to keep busy. She took to wearing her silk Chinese bathrobe every day, and in the mornings she would sweep royally around the kitchen, umbilically attached to the telephone by its long curdy cord, as she made the daily round of calls to keep the search going. Her skin flushed pink, the furs on her cheeks visible with sweat. Sometimes she kept busy by cleaning a hurricane of mopping and scrubbing, or by exercising in the den downstairs in front of the TV. Sometimes I joined her, doing TikToks or cartwheels on the thinly carpeted floor, while she huffed through aerobics, her robe jerking and wafting and getting in the way. Sometimes I sat and watched daytime TV with her after, and every once in a while went over to the couch and removed the floppy Ziploc from her swollen eyes, then went up to the kitchen to pour out the water and refill the bag with ice cubes. I'll never forget that blue smell of melted ice. the faint sparkle of pain in my Achilles tendons, and my young girl nipples, the carb bedlam of sitcom laughter. I told Dr. Rothman none of this at the time. It will take years for these memories to cohere, to take form and take on life, to become things that needed attention. So, your brother liked to draw a group of people. What kind of people? Tall, short, tall. They leaned sideways, but I don't think that was on purpose. Oh, Wayne just didn't know how to do lines straight because he was left-handed. My grandma said that was bad luck, but my dad got mad and said that she was stuck in the past. Dr. Rothman did not reply to that, and he did not yawn, not even in the disguised way. His silence was irritating. A tangle of stalks growing and poking me. I kept talking to squash them. Wayne always got in trouble for drawing on the walls. It did not wash out. I told him he would get in trouble. I shrugged. I see, Dr. Rothman said. And did he get in trouble? Did you tell your mother about the drawings on the walls? Yeah, but it did not matter. Wayne was sneaky. He just drew them behind the furniture instead. I could tell that the condensation in my voice was distasteful to Dr. Rothman. I knew how utterly abominable I was as a teenager. That was half my excruciation. I sat back in my chair, disliking him, my throat choked with wanting him not to dislike me, with wanting him to believe me. The story they pulled from me 1,000, 1,000,000 times went like this. I felt him go, and he was gone. No, my mother said. Why wouldn't that man have tried to save Wayne too? Why wouldn't he have brought him home to me? Wayne was already dead by then, I said. No, my mother said. Why didn't that man wait with you at the house until help came? I told him to leave, I said. I did not remember this, but I knew the man had gone because I remembered sitting alone inside, my trembling thighs. I remembered my father coming in the front door, asking me questions, bustling me upstairs and into the bath. I remembered soaking in the tub, the crumbly boy. No, my mother said. She did not believe me. It doesn't make sense. She had other hypotheses. Maybe I was lying about the windbreaker man, or had imagined him. Maybe I was the one who had selfishly or fearfully left Wayne behind. Maybe the windbreaker man did exist, and he had kidnapped Wayne. Maybe a 7-year-old boy was of more interest to a middle-aged man than a 12-year-old girl. No matter what, maybe the one thing she clung to, my mother's one firm belief, was that Wayne was out there, somewhere, waiting to be found. And without his corpse, no one could convince her otherwise. So, in our family, there was a story, there was this law, but it split in two, where Wayne had left it. It split, then circled around the empty space where he should have been, and joined back together at the point where I walked into the house without him. The law was a loop at the end of a rope, a lasso endlessly tossed, catching nothing. Me, every time. I felt him die. I know he is dead. My mother, every time. Where is he? What really happened that day? My father, one time, when he'd finally had enough. Why does it matter? Either way, the boy is gone. He didn't otherwise intervene in the impasse between me and my mother, which came to dictate our lives. I know now that she was beside herself with grief, that she had slipped into some other groove, some other reality. But I felt betrayed. I will be honest with you. I cried more for my mother's betrayal than I ever cried for my brother's death. It wasn't clear if guilt or hope was prompting her theories, her hypotheses, which varied depending on the time of day, on the day of the man, on moods that orbited a moon of her own. Though her inconsistency was precisely her weakness, the fact that she refused my account embittered me. It occurred to me more than once that I could take it back and make something else up. No one knew what had really happened, and people make things up all the time. But I was consistent, if not about what happened, then about how it felt. What they pulled from me 1,000,000,000 times, therapist after therapist, doctor after doctor, catechism after catechism, got worn down to a certain smoothness. No matter the details, it ended the same way. I felt him die. He was dead. You have to understand, I didn't want to believe this. My mind, in fact, seemed to refuse it. How many times did I undo it? How many times did I dream with relief that my brother was alive, then wake to the crisis of him dead? One night, I came upstairs to go to sleep and saw a gap of light under the door of my bedroom. It was Wayne's old bedroom. I had insisted on taking it over. I opened the door. My parents were inside, sitting next to each other on my bed, hunched over. My mother was weeping. My father looked guilty and a bit bored. Beside them, my dresser was pulled out at an angle, bearing the lighter space on the wall that it usually protected from dust. And there, inside the wall stand line, I saw a sketch of 3 stick figures, 2 small ones, 1 short. When had Wayne drawn them? The figures listed to the right, their oval faces smiling and punched with their round, blunt eyes. I'm starting a foundation, my mother announced the next day when I came down for breakfast. I'm calling it Vigil. She looked up from a dozen of yellow post-its spread in a methodical, fluttering puzzle over the table. I stiffened but said nothing as I poured myself a bowl of frosted flakes. We have to take the clues seriously, she muttered. The signs. We have to investigate. My father ignored it, the entire thing. When he used one of those post-its as a coaster for his coffee, my mother just sniffed. The police have investigated so many times, I whined to Dr. Rothman that week. They did a search. They dredged the shore. We put up the flyers. It was on the local news for weeks. They went to every single house in town. I shook my head. I gave my report like 1,000 times. But Dr. Rothman wanted none of this aftermath. He wanted only stories about a living, breathing Wayne. He asked about my brother doggedly, as if to keep us on track, to keep us focused until we reached the interesting or the useful things. Only then would the good doctor spring to partial life, his brow twitching. But as repulsive as I found him, I felt relief whenever we talked about Wayne's drawings, as if I were finally giving him something worth his while. And Dr. Rothman gave me some things too, I will admit. He put some concepts in my hands, containers for the mark of feelings in my home. He put the pen in my hand. He taught me to get it all out, write my dreams down, write letters to Wayne. He taught me about versions of things. He taught me that grief doesn't choose its timing well. You never know when it will grip your neck. For instance, the way Wayne had cried when he could not find his stuffed kangaroo was not so different from the sound our mother made when I found it in the car a year or so after he died. I had dropped a Pez canister and was hunting for it under the driver's seat in front of me when my hand landed on the kangaroo. It was covered in dust bunnies, like it was being devoured by a horde of them. The car was still moving. My parents were chatting absently. I shoved the stuffed animal into view, into the space between the front seats, and my mother gasped. Wayne had given the kangaroo a name corresponding to no language, to no one else's notion of a name. None of us, not I, not my father, not my mother, could remember that strange name now. As my father drove us home, my mother sat, weeping in the passenger seat, smoothing the kangaroo's long ears, slipping a finger into its pouch. Shortly after the kangaroo reappeared, my mother kept herself busy by throwing out all of the toys in the house. I ran to my father crying, not because I still played with any of the toys she was tossing, and not because they reminded me of Wayne, but because she had not distinguished between his toys, black, white, red, ones, cards, string, and mine, a fuzzy rainbow clutter of dolls and various arts and crafts. Why is she doing this? I moaned to my father. She just needs to. His voice was tight, distracted. He was sitting in front of the desktop in the study. His hands on the keys were ashy at the knuckles. You don't care, I sobbed, standing next to him. Why aren't you stopping her? The tears on my cheek felt ticklish and comforting. One eye was crying more than the other. I was too old for this, and we both knew it, but my father did not scold me. He rolled the chair back from the oak desk and pulled me onto his knees. He ruffled my curls and kissed the top of my head, his lips saying, "Shh." I was too old for this too. I leaned back and rested my head on his shoulder and let my crying wash through me, staring blankly at the screen as he typed in search terms. I wish I'd paid more attention then to what he was searching for. Over the months, we found more and more of Wayne's drawings, those bundles of thin lines on the walls, behind the couch in the den, under a windowsill next to the upstairs toilet, inside the door of a high-up kitchen cabinet we never used, behind the curtains on either side of the living room windows. They were always in pencil, the same 3 stick figures, sometimes in a series, more like clones than a family. My mother spoke of haunting, but more often of signs. He is trying to tell us something, she'd whispered from inside a cage of her fingers. We have to find him. We have to investigate. These are all drawings, Shah, my father maintained. He had taken to painting over each one the moment we found it. He was as adamant about painting over them as my mother had been about throwing out Wayne's toys, but he didn't ever paint over the first one they'd found, behind my dresser. I didn't tell him. It felt important to the balance of the situation that it stays there. I made sure I was always too busy in my bedroom whenever he came in the open door with a paint can and brush, a shower of dried paint like a far-off galaxy on his ratty old Mali t-shirt. I don't like the smell of the paint. I'd wrinkle my nose, or I'm doing my homework. I'd shake my head, or do you have to do it right now? I'd look up from a jigsaw puzzle, its mainland flush against the wall. He wanted to paint and finish islands around me. He left it. At night, I would investigate the drawing on my own, carefully moving the dresser, lifting it so its scrap on the floor would not betray me. I pictured Wayne's hand, crudely fisted around the pencil, his bottom lip pouting, his tongue peeking out with focus. I hovered my finger over the lines so as not to smudge them. I redrew the figures behind my closed eyes as I tried to sleep. I compared the drawing to the others. I compared it to how that day I had looked in the steamed-up mirror and seen that splotch of clarity in the middle of the fog, a handprint too small to be mine, how I had wiped my hand straight through it. The day I caught my mother drawing on the walls, I felt a thrill of confirmation. I had come into the study to fetch a pair of scissors and found my mother on her knees under the oak desk, facing the wall. Her head was tilted, so her hair was hanging to one side. I watched her draw a long leg down from a rectangular torso on the wall. Her shoulder bumped the desk leg and she said, "Oh," and giggled to herself. I listened and watched. She began to hum the Itsy Bitsy Spider song, which she'd recently decided had been Wayne's favorite. I tiptoed away, my heart thumping triumphantly. I found my father in the kitchen, bent over a nearly empty fridge, its platinum light making the new white in his beard glint. A packet of frozen pork chops sat on the counter. His lips were parted when he turned and looked at me. He seemed dazzled. I told him in a heated food rush what I had seen my mother doing in the study. There's no time, I said as I turned to the door. We had to catch her before she finished. My father straightened up, but he didn't budge. The fridge light cast flat ovals on his cheekbones. After a moment, he began to scold me. He had noticed that I was no longer much of a truth teller, he said. He had noticed, in fact, that I was always telling tales, like it was some kind of a joking matter, he said. My eyes flooded with wet fury. My ears got hot. He was punishing me, it seemed, for what I had said about my mother. But even as I burned and melted, not saying a word, I knew that my father would not outright call me a liar. That word and its variants were considered curses on his side of the family. Like many children forced to work around the constraints of taboo, my brother and I had always circled lie and liar, snuck up on them. Don't be silly, you are the liar. And so that day my father called my news that my mother was drawing pictures behind the furniture and pretending they were wings, any and every word other than lies that would still warrant a thorough telling of. He went through as many synonyms as needed: stories, tales, fibs, nonsense, foolishness, to let all the time in the world pass us by, to let my mother finish her drawing and crawl out from under the desk undisturbed.